Okay, there we go. Okay, guys, I'm not going to, I just can't seem to share my screen with you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just have a quick discussion with you about a really quite amazing conversation that I witnessed yesterday afternoon. And that was what made me realize that leaders are actually coaches. And they are there to help guide and nurture people and to, or their teams, and to really be someone who does so in the most effective way, but who can guide people in such a way that they don't feel as if they're being controlled or talked down to or actually instructed the whole way. And I attended this talk yesterday by a guy by the name of Marshall Goldsmith, who's absolutely amazing. And he used what he called feed forward instead of feedback. And this involves focusing on the future and the actionable suggestions rather than dwelling on past mistakes. And I thought that was actually quite a sort of a breakthrough moment for me. That's actually painting the picture of what's happening or what you'd like to happen in the future, rather than actually, and what needs to be actionable for the future, rather than on worrying about what's happened in the past. And he said, one of the things that you start with is really humility, and realizing that you yourself as a leader can improve. And then without this acknowledgement, he was saying it's really difficult to accept that there is a need to change with yourself and with people around you. So he recommended start with humility in yourself when building that high-performing team, and as your role as a new leader. Start with humility. The second thing he was saying is identify just one behavior to improve. Identify just one behavior to improve. And what he felt was that one behavior would make a significant positive impact on your leadership. And he basically said that it needed to be specific, it needed to be measurable, and it needed to be meaningful. And I just thought that that was so appropriate at the time. I really did. Then one of the things that I thought was also quite obvious, but something that people don't tend to do, and that is to write down your goal. Clearly articulate what you want to achieve, because that actually makes it more real, it's tactile, and it's tangible. And then the next point he made was asking for feed forward. Instead of feedback on past behaviors, he was suggesting that ask colleagues for ideas that can help you achieve your goal in the future. Ask colleagues for ideas that will help you achieve your goals in the future. So that actually even means the people in your team. Ask one another what's going to help you achieve your goals in the future. Listen and thank, and we've spoken about this on many times before. Listen and thank when receiving suggestions. He was saying that we, without judgment, need to listen to that, and then express gratitude without debating the merit of the input. Listen and thank, and then follow up. I think a lot of us would be quite used to following up if we're committed to improvement and to hold ourselves accountable. And then finally, to show a bit of courage and discipline as we follow through on the suggestions that we receive. So yeah, those were a couple of the Marshall Goldsmith ideas that I heard yesterday, and I'm going to carry on with one more, and I'm going to post these in the chat, and that these are the 6 daily questions that he recommended for everyone. And I'll go through them quickly. And this is about fostering collaborative culture. And that is, did I do my best to set clear goals today? Did I do my best to make progress towards my goals today? Did I do my best to find meaning today in the work that I'm doing? Did I do my best to find meaning today? And did I do my best to be happy today? This comes back to you, Junior. And did I do my best to build positive relationships today? And did I do my best to be engaged today? I'm going to pop those in the chat for you guys to have a look at. And yeah, I think, let me just find where this is. Notes, here we go. It's not in notes. Hold on. Where is it? I'm not having a good day today, guys. Chat, here we go. Yeah. There we go. Oh, it's not the one. Hold on. Let me get these again. Look, I'll have to send them to you individually. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of one of those old days, I'm afraid. So I'm going to, did I do my best? And this comes back to a conversation that you and I have held before, Junior, and that was about what is good enough and who decides what's good enough and what is acceptable in order to go forward every day. So I'm going to come in now and ask you, I believe Donnell's not going to be here the whole time. You, Junior, what do you think, just a quick question here, when you're building a high-performing team, what is the immediate role of a new leader? What is the most important new leader's role? You there?
These issues are rather context bound. So what's the immediate new role going to be depends on what is the existing environment. And that's most probably where the whole thing comes in. No two new leaders going to have the same role.
Right.
And this is what's missing in most. And unfortunately, despite was it Marshall Goldsmith,
Yeah.
what's he called?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, from a coaching realm, these guys have got good things that they have to say. But unfortunately, your behavior is not going to change because you don't understand what you need to change from context from a team. And your first role is to understand what you don't understand. That's for me the more important thing. You don't understand the team. You don't understand what the team is doing. You don't understand what the team has experienced before you, unless you've been promoted up from within the team. So your first role is firstly to understand is to understand where you're actually standing within the team. And for most, the problem that they have is they've been promoted from a high performance or a high performing individual into now a team leadership role. And your first role is to understand is basically going to be how your role is changing from that context. That's for me, that's more important. To want to come and fix and do something is most probably the worst thing that you can do, because firstly, you don't understand, you haven't got that context to relate to. So I think is to embed yourself into the team first, into the daily runnings and what they're doing and how they're doing things. And again, it's a learning process. Enlighten me, tell me where I am, what are you doing, why are you doing it? It's not a matter of micromanagement, it's a matter of learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important role a new leader is going to have, unless they are coming in and having served in a similar role already in the team or in a similar team within the same organizations, then that swap over can actually happen quite fast. But normally for a new leader is they're coming in blind. And that's one of the biggest issues that we have. Does not matter how much HR or whatever give you details on what the actual team is, who the team is, what they're doing. HR is the most distant persons from the actual team at that
Yeah.
stage. So it essentially is you got to come in blind and you got to be able to open up and say, okay, I'm a blind book. I'm a blank sheet. I got to start writing up everything in here. And only then can you start actually effectively thinking about what needs to be done. And 9 out of 10 times, it's not what you think needs to be done, is what the team knows they need to do. And what does your role become then within context, what the team knows they need to do before you start considering is it effective or efficient what they're doing, and then looking at the complexity around those effective efficiency uh, and the value that they're creating from it, and what is the obstacle is actually standing in the way. So most of the time is, I think that first initial role is catch up.
Right. Well, look, I think I'm going to move on to the next slide that I wanted to just discuss and that is about fostering that collaborative culture. When you are fostering that collaborative culture in a new team, now you're a new person in a new team, what kind of communication, what kind of tools would you use in your communication to be able to encourage that open communication with your team, Junior?
At the moment, if I go a traditional way, I'm not sure. I'm being very honest with you about it. If I look at the work that we're doing, we know exactly what to do. And that is to basically go to the persons, get that non-judgmental, unbiased inputs that we can create and understand where they stand in context of what's happening around them at the moment.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem that we have is if you're going to ask somebody, how can I help you? Most of that's going to come out of the things that's most on the conscious mind at the moment, if I can put for working memory. But I'm not going to be able to give you the deeper inputs that's actually from a subconscious, where it encompasses all the little subtle things that when you add it together, may then take you to a different place from what they think they need you to do for them.
Yeah.
So most of the time as a human, we will be reacting to the most or latest stressor, if I can put it that way. But that stressor is not necessarily the root cause of a stress as how it's displayed and what they can verbalize to you as being the stressor. So it is actually very, very difficult from that point of view. So you can hit and miss, or you can be lucky that the person is self-aware and they can actually take you close to where it needs to be. But in general, what you're going to find is that because there is no trust yet, there's no social contract yet, until that point, it's going to be hit and miss.
Yeah. I'm going to interrupt you a little bit and say this, ask this question. Nowadays, with huge varying age groups in organizations, like old billets like you and me, how would you suggest, how would you approach younger professionals, say in their 20s and 30s, that you've never worked with before? How would you tackle this one? Am I asking you a tough question?
No, it's very simple. What's the problem you're working on? And then actually let them start talking about what they're experiencing of a problem. But the thing is this, is you cannot go back, and this is this thinking forward and not thinking backwards.
Yeah.
It's not how you used to solve it. It is, yes, an old solution valid for a new problem, because it's the same problem as just how can I say, been reimagined, or it's just shown up in a different variant of itself,
Yeah.
and it's not actually a new problem. But the
Mm.
problem is you cannot just say to her, but why don't you do this? I think, especially with young people today, is they want to be interactive, they want to be part of a conversation, they want to be knowing, learning. They are very willing to learn. They're very practical, actually.
Mm.
And it doesn't help you come and hit them with a type of a theoretical approach. Is, I think, making it simple and practical, and say to them, here's a problem. How do you go about it?
Yeah.
You know, and why in the past you may give them an example, and the past this may have been a solution, but you can then say, I don't think it's viable anymore. It's most effective way anymore. How
Mm.
would you? How would you suggest? You know, this is where that part comes in, is interactively drawing them into the conversation. So I haven't got a problem there, because the issue we got to understand is still the same brain that's doing the work, whether you're old or young. It's
Yeah.
just the context, the background from where you're approaching it, and the ease of which you maybe say can reach out to technology, or reach technology, or use technology,
Mm.
just changes the context you may approach it. But it's the same person, and as long as we take the behavior away and start saying and keep all this nonsense we've been fed about millennials and Gen Zs and all these things, it really is nonsense. Just
Yeah.
say to them, hey, you maybe just don't have experience, but you have a different experience, so share it.
Yeah. I like that approach that you're suggesting. And I think, a lot of the younger folks, the millennials and what have you, have got such a different uh, sort of perspective on life, their use of technology, social media, and so on. And the skills that they bring to the party is something quite incredible. Their efficiency, their knowledge, and their vibrance and energy, I think, is something that I find extremely interesting and encouraging. And that enthusiasm to learn as well, to me, is it creates a very vibrant workspace, and certainly in my experience, it's helped overcome problems very quickly, and that's very, very satisfying. I'm going to go on to the next topic, and that was really around having a look at how we align our goals and our vision. I think a sort of a pet favorite of mine was having, the vision of the organization sort of cascade down to the very most, or the smallest unit in the organization. But I was quite clear on having my team and the people around me understand what the organization's overall vision was, and that there was a shared understanding of that vision. Because I often think that there's this disconnect between, where you are on the ground and the sort of lofty ambitions of an organization. What do you think is the most effective way of giving the person in the smaller units, the smaller, or the sort of the foundational areas of the business? What do you think the best way is of giving them an understanding of their contribution to the overall vision of the organization? How do you think it would be best to do that, Junior?
Let an organization.
Yeah.
It's maybe not the answers you're looking for, but it's flatten the organization.
Yeah.
Most visions at the moment is the sports is dysfunctional. It does not touch on the realities with the person in the ground. So the more you try and force them to endorse or to, how can I say, follow the vision of organization, is the way that they encounter the customer on the ground is totally different from what it's imagined at the higher level.
Yeah.
And usually most of these visions are created bringing in a consultant from outside, which is even further distant from the actual workplace.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. So for me, a vision is not is rather not vague, but it becomes more like a set of anchor barriers on a mountain pass. it keeps you going off the rails, but it sets a broad set. It should not be narrow. It should be very broad and say, this is the direction we're going into, and this is the type of customer we're looking for, and how we're going to engage with a customer, and how we're going to engage and create the products that will satisfy. Because in the end of the day, a vision is not set by what you think you're going to do. It's a demand by the customer and down the street. And who's closest to the customer is actually that small little unit is talking about.
Yeah.
So the formation of a vision is most probably has to be turned upside down. And this is what Haya did. They've got a vision, they're going to service a customer. So what was their vision? Their vision is very simple. They created Rinda and Hay. So Rinda and Hay basically means employee, customer, and a product, and getting those together. That's their vision.
Yeah.
So where you apply it, whether it's in electronics or data information, or if it's manufacturing a project, whatever, it doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
Their overall vision is, how do you get the customer, directly dealing with a customer, and then a solution that they're creating, how do you get them close as possible to each other, and how do you support that? That is basically what the vision stands in broad stands for.
Yeah.
And that's why I say today you have a company, we've got a vision, we're going to do this. But if we go back to Sidney Yoshida's iceberg of ignorance, most of those visions are created to 4 to 9% of the reality of what's happening on the ground. So whenever you create a vision and you want to execute it, execute if you don't understand the basics, what's happening on the ground and what the people are experiencing.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I always enjoyed watching was this in organizations when the CEO or managing director was actually occasionally at the front line, in the trenches, for another metaphor, where they actually were watching exactly what was happening on the ground at the front line, and actually touring or having a look at and experiencing what people at the hierarchically at the sort of the coalface of the organization were experiencing, and actually helping out. And I mean, often we see these senior execs rolling up their sleeves occasionally and doing something, where they're serving the public face to face. And the encouragement that people actually experience by actually having their senior boss at ground level, as it were, to me was always very well worth the effort, because people's morale and their attitude towards senior management, as well as seeing people up at senior levels supporting them at ground level, was very encouraging for them. And the conversation after people had left, or senior people had left, was always very positive, I would say. Not every time, but in most instances was very positive, because people could see that A, they cared, and B, that they were actually seeing and experiencing what people were experiencing at ground level of an organization. I'm going to keep moving forward with the next slide, and that is about continuous improvement and adaptation. And the three headings I've got there are embrace, encourage, and celebrate. When you are embracing change and being flexible, when you're embracing change and being flexible, what are the key things to look out for, Junior, when you're doing something different in the organization? How do you monitor that? And how do you know you're on track or not?
Traditionally, very difficult to know if you're on track or not, because the process is involved until you see a result. It's got a long delay in it. And that's always been a problem.
Yeah.
So project overrun, cost overrun, a time schedule slide. Everybody's saying everything's on time, and all of a sudden when the time runs out, it's not there, or there's a blowout or whatever.
Yeah.
So what we've changed is that actually there's two sides to a human. One side that's always positive, say yes, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Then there's a reality side which is suppressed. And this is when we took you through the humanics, is that we forget what we see in the behavior and we start looking at the reality, what the person's not declaring, but actually physically experiencing. So
Right.
the subconscious will never lie to you. The conscious is not lying to you, but is trying to project a positivity because uh, admitting something's not working is they don't want to, because it can have a negative impact. So they try and convince themselves, yes, it's working, it's going to work on things. You don't want to be seen as a toxic one, saying this is not going to work, this is undoable or whatever. And this is one of the biggest problems that we have. So I think monitoring the change is usually they have deliverables, they have on a project timeline, they have milestones and all those things. But I've seen it how many times that the people uh, manipulate things in such a way that it seems like you are on time, things are happening, but in the meanwhile, they're hoping that a miracle or something's going to happen that somebody else has promised, and it never does.
Yeah. So
So
can I just interrupt there? So it's a case of under budgeting by half in terms of time and resources and money.
not really. It's actually budgeting on time, but the thing is based on somebody's perception. And
Yeah.
usually it is well, simple raw example. When I walked into the role in Saudi Arabia, uh, I did an interview in Bahrain, flew back to South Africa, and then next week I was in Perth. And I walk into this meeting, okay, what's going to happen? Introduction to the team, whatever. And then all of a sudden, oh no, we're discussing a budget for the new project. We
Right.
started with 500 million, and 7 hours later we walked out with 250 million.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So now you got to go and build a mine. I knew 500 was a logical number because it made sense what needed to be done. And then they just decided, no, it's too much. We can't build it for that because uh, in my own stupidity and wanting to be not the negative one or whatever, you go along with the ride, and that's a problem. Oh, we'll
Mm.
make it work. We can do it work. We've always pulled something out of a hat, but there's a point we can't pull it out of a hat.
Yeah.
And like I say, you've committed into a new job. You just walked in. You don't want to just walk out tomorrow again and lose it again. So you get taken for a ride, and that's one of the things. So
So you
when
weren't
it comes,
able, you weren't able to convince them that the figure that they'd arrived at was less or 50% of what you actually needed to do to accomplish the job.
I literally walked in, never seen anything on a project, and
Right.
they were just cutting, slashing right, left, right, and center.
So you were just working on your own experience
Yeah,
and
as you're walking through, you see immediately, okay, this is not going to work. Timeline is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. But you cannot say because you haven't seen the ground. You cannot just transfer your experience one place to another place if you haven't seen the new location. So I didn't know what was available when it was available, and yes, when we got to the ground, we could tweak a few things, and normal persons would have walked away most probably. We tweaked a few things, but in the end of the day, we took the budget up to 300, I think 350 million,
right,
because the 500 couldn't do it. But the tricks that we had to pull to still only blow out by 50% was phenomenal.
right. Yeah. And over how long was this particular project?
Well, we did in 2.5 years.
Mm,
So
right.
so basically, until they started the plant built, the plant was just built just after I left. I was eventually fired because I just couldn't. There's certain things I couldn't overlook
Mm,
because I was rolling over from exploration stage into preparation of a mining stage. And that was completed, and then what happened from there is then we had to start the build up into full production. And then certain things I wanted us to do or had us do would have meant I would have stayed on then to become the project when it was operations, to be the general manager of operations. And I knew I wouldn't be able to deliver on everything that they put out there, for investors and things. So in the end of the day, we were taken over, and in that process, I was shifted sideways and out of a project because you just carry too much knowledge about it.
Yeah.
You quietly just taken off the books and you move, And then being a foreign location is not like being in your own country where you can make noise. You cannot make noise.
Okay, so that's huge, big scale projects where you're a very senior person in the organization. Let's say you're you're in an office, you're in an environment where you've been asked to do stuff which is completely overwhelming, and it's not in your original sort of brief, but you're willing to take on this extra work, whatever it may be. But it's absolutely nailing you. It's nailing your mental health, your physical health. You're totally exhausted. When do you quit? When do you say, look, actually, no, I'm pushing back now. They haven't listened to me. They haven't heard my explanation as to why this role is just far bigger than I anticipated. I'm not being disloyal to the company. I'm not saying I can't do it, but it's really affecting me personally. And your business is about well-being. When do you say, I can't do it anymore, I've got to quit?
See, this is conditional to the individual, unfortunately. It becomes really difficult. People who know they're about will try and change it. They'll quit later. Those who are really, how can I say, flexible of mind, those who are really smart, they'll actually quit later than a person who's actually just know they can't do it. They'll throw their hands in the air and just walk. I've had people just throw their hands in the air and they just walk away. And where are you going? No, I've had enough. The problem is that we have is there's always those people who think they can change it, they can make it. Yes, it is overwhelming. They may not have experienced it, but they've got certain capabilities. But effectively, nobody knows when to quit, because it's not so much about the quitting, or not so much about saying it is the periphery of your experiences around you, not so much experiences, but the reason why you are there. Very few people actually got the luxury of just quitting and walking away.
Yeah, I understand
Because nine out of 10 times, people will stick it out, even eventually be fired, made a scapegoat, because they simply cannot afford to lose their job. And that's where the problem comes in. So the ones who can quit are usually the ones who make noise and will then push, and they'll be either pushed out as toxic, they'll be constructively dismissed, or they may hit the luck that a very much more senior person take note of what they're saying and then say, okay, this needs to change. Okay. But most of the time, the normal bloke or whoever is down there will just try and do what they're being told to do until it just blows up. And it's just one of those things, unfortunately. But the ones who's really smart is usually too smart for themselves. They try and make it work, they try and prove it, and they actually just make it worse for themselves, because they know they should be walking, but it's this natural thing that's in you. You don't just walk, and that's most probably the older generation has been taught. You do not just walk away from something. But I think more on the Gen Z and those people now, they'll just say to you, I'm sorry, we're not interested, we're walking. And I think that's most probably one of the things. And we'll most probably people end up telling, oh, you're just giving up, you're a quitter or whatever. They don't care about that. If it's not feasible, they're gonna not waste their time. They're gonna walk.
It's sort of topical because yesterday, I must say, I had a look at, there was a book out that I took a casual glimpse at some of the chapter headings around that. And it was about quitting and knowing when to quit and when not to quit. And yes, there are sort of peaks and troughs in an in an organization and even in your own role. And yes, you may have built up, a great deal of resilience in past roles where hey, you know what? I know I can manage this because I've managed this before. And I have the experience of knowing that, yep, we're going through a really tough time at the moment, but we'll get out of it. And then it will be sort of cruisy after this again for a while. There'll be a bit of a break, might be seasonal or whatever. But yeah, I was just curious on your take, and I'm really pleased that you've come up with those explanations. I think we're going to call it a day there. The final thing was just about celebration, and perhaps you can wrap this one up for us. What we talk about celebrating successes and learning from failures. I think, some of the most humble speeches that I've heard have been when leaders have actually recognized that we've either achieved something, but at the same time, they've talked about what some of the failures were in an organization. I think it takes a bold man and a brave man or woman to say, you know what, we really did have some tough times in achieving this goal, and these were them, but we managed to have a success overall. Junior, I'm going to give you the last word. I know we have another guest on Netzanet, and I don't know if you'd like to mute yourself or unmute yourself and give us your views on celebrating successes and learning from failures. But I'll let Junior speak first, and then Netzanet can unmute themselves. I'll give you a minute or two there, Junior, if that's good.
Yeah, I think celebrating success, it comes natural. People know when they're successful and they have a fun and enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
It's not so much a physical celebration, but it's when it comes to talking about what happened, like you said, for failures, bringing it up. It's not so much for failure, but it's understanding or sharing how we actually came out of those failures.
Yeah.
And this is usually the point where you'll bring up especially specific members in the team who unexpectedly come forward with stuff.
Yeah.
Surprising stuff that surprised you, things that you didn't think about, or that you threw a challenge at them, said to them, okay, we now backs against the wall, what are you going to do? And I think that is the biggest thing, is that pushing the team rather forward then, and leaders who actually pride themselves that they made a success of something is usually the ones who's was just riding the fanfare of others. But usually what you find, the really good leaders is going to stand back and really highlight those individuals and groups and things that really did something great. And I think that's the thing about celebration. It's about highlighting who they are and what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that is rather the thing. Yes, point out the failures. What is the failures? But with a failure comes success, and that's what I try and tell people often is, when you bring a problem, don't just if you just bring a problem, you're just moaning.
Yeah.
But if you bring a problem and you already got a solution, even if it's not a best solution, but you got a solution you're bringing with it, that's what we want to hear. And I think this is the part here where failure is not so about what people did wrong, but it's what went wrong, and then how people did something to get over it or to fix it or to change it.
Yeah. So actually, just to summarize, is leaders who are celebrating success and who are actually highlighting how parts of their team or members of their team overcame obstacles that could have led to failure, or that sort of pulled things out the fire, and highlighting their successes when they overcome some of these failures. It allowed generally the project to be successful. Okay, so cool. Thank you so much, Junior. Thank you so much, Netsanet. Thank you so much, Rana. I'm afraid you joined us very late in the day. But the rest of the recording will go up on YouTube. And I want to thank you all for being here, and especially to Frank Sess, who helped me in the background and did the recordings and so on. So thank you guys so much for joining us today on the Leadership Launchpad. And we'll look forward to seeing you at the 12th and final one for this sort of season when we do this again next week. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Rick.
Bye-bye.
Keep well.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.